Did you know that as of 2025, the health and wellness industry is estimated to be worth $7.2 trillion, with that number expected to grow to 9 trillion by 2028? That is trillion with a T, not billion. The human brain literally can't even comprehend what a number that size means. But potentially even more confusing than that huge, mind-boggling number is the health and wellness industry itself. Because what even is it? What actually is wellness? What are they selling that makes this worth more than the GDP of almost all the countries in the planet combined? And most importantly, what does it mean to you if you just want to be a little healthier and a little more well off? Welcome to Change Made Easy. Changing your habits, routines, and behaviors is hard. We make it easy. I'm Paul Levitin, and I help anyone who's feeling stuck, stagnant, or burned out to create positive change in their lives that lasts forever. It's that easy. If you've ever wondered what exactly health and wellness means, you're not alone. Everyone wants to be healthy, but if you ask 10 people what health is, you'll get 10 different answers. So to get to the bottom of this, today I'm speaking with Sarah Hays Coomer. Sarah is a national board-certified health and wellness coach, a multiple best-selling author, and the author of the Forbes column, Hey Health Coach, where she answers questions from readers about the health coaching industry, as well as the intersection of overall health and well-being. I invited Sarah on the show to discuss questions like what it means to be a client-centered coach and why you need to understand the difference if you're looking for a coach to help you grow and change in any area, not just health and wellness. How giving yourself permission to make mistakes and mess up will actually lead to less mistakes and more growth over time, and why trying to be your quote-unquote best self is actually holding you back from doing just that. All of that and much more in this conversation with Sarah Hays Coomer. Enjoy. What is the job of a health and wellness coach?
So a health and wellness coach works with a client to help them discover what is most important to them and to help them achieve those ends in ways that feel comfortable and natural for them so that they're not swimming against the waves, as you say.
I love that. I love that saying, swimming against the current. Exactly. So when you say something that is comfortable for them, how does that look, and how, as a practitioner, are you able to make sure that you're doing that if it's different for every person?
Yeah, so we should probably qualify the word comfortable also, because things that are challenging are not necessarily easy. So the job is to go in and see, to kind of take a snapshot of the current moment that somebody is in. And for that, they need to be mindful and aware of what's happening with their bodies and listening for alarm bells that are coming up and saying, you know what, this is really uncomfortable right now. I'm having some kind of pain. I'm having stomach upset. I'm having a regular recurring thing, even distraction or inability to focus or be present with work or with family or kids or anything like that. So looking for what is going on and really finding out where there is discord, and then building on that to find, okay, what are the things you love? What comes naturally to you? What are we actually aiming for? What does quality of life mean to you? Establishing those things and then working backwards from there to find out what kind of rituals and routines somebody has going on currently and what we can sort of tweak and play around with to get there along the way. Always looking to the client for the information about what the next step forward should be.
Yeah, I think that that's very helpful and very interesting, and a big tenet of coaching, obviously, that I understand is being client-centered. And I think that this is why I really wanted to talk to you and why I enjoy having conversations like this, because one, I understand that health and wellness coaching as an industry is fairly a new thing. Most people don't even know what that is. When I tell people I'm a board licensed health and wellness coach, they're like, okay, like that literally means nothing to me. I want people to understand what this is so that they can see if this is something that might benefit them in their own wellness journey. So what does it mean to you to be client centered?
So first, I just want to pause on what you just said about the National Board certification, which is hugely important. The gratitude that I have for those folks, for the hard work that they have done to make this possible is enormous. So this field has been around for a long time. Health coaching, sort of a general, vague kind of a thing. I had technically a health coaching certification like 15 years ago, a decade before the National Board existed. I gathered from your bio that you also have a background as a trainer and have come to this later as the field developed. So that board certification is really something people can look for when they're looking for a really, really qualified health coach. Well, I'm sorry, what was the question you asked? I got all excited about that.
Yes, I first of all, I completely agree. And that's why I sought out to get my board certification, was just because I believe it brings a level of legitimacy, especially coming from the fitness world, which I know you are as well. Certifications can be gotten in a weekend or even a day, and they're thrown around. People throw these letters after their names, which I have a million of. I have an alphabet after my name that really don't mean that much, but the National Board certification is so much more real, and it brings us a level of legitimacy that wasn't there before. That's why I don't even like the term. I abhor the term life coach, and even health coach I feel like is pretty tricky, because again, as you said, for decades there were people calling themselves health coaches when there was no actual thing to qualify in that. Yeah, anyone could just say that they were a health coach. So for anyone listening, a board licensed health and wellness coach is an actual thing that both Sarah and I have been gone through rigorous trials, so you could say, and you have to test into it. It's done by a board that's nationally recognized, so it's just more of a real thing. But my question, building on that, was part of what we learn about in the certification that, at least that I took, and I know different people take different certifications, but I know that all of coaching is centered around being client centered. So I wanted you to elaborate a little bit about what that exactly means to you and why that's so important.
Yeah, so the research and the evidence shows that when, and you probably listeners know this from their own lives, when somebody tells you what to do, whether that's a trainer or a nutritionist or a doctor, somebody's telling you what to do for your health, and you go, yeah, great, I'll do that. And then you go home and your life takes over, and it's very difficult and quite infrequent for people to actually follow through on that advice if they haven't had some kind of big scare, cancer diagnosis or something like that, to really drive their motivation. So when we talk about being client-centered, it's about, I, as the coach, am not going to tell you what you're supposed to do. I'm not going to sit here and make you a prescription out of the blue that worked for somebody, but who knows if it could work for you. So what we need to do is establish what are your priorities, what matters the most to you, what feels interesting, what feels manageable, what kind of obstacles are you facing in your life right now to this, what has been getting in your way up until now, and then what are the solutions that we can kind of brainstorm and come up with together so that we can move you forward toward those goals in a really structured, measurable way.
Yeah, I think that's so powerful. And exactly as you said, I think any listener will have that experience. And I always say, especially if you're a parent, especially if you're a teacher, this with kids, that when you tell a kid what to do, what is exactly the first thing they do is the exact opposite. And humans are the same way, where we do not like to be controlled. And even though you think of someone like a personal trainer, where a personal trainer is someone that you're asking for their advice, at the root of it, we still want to be in charge of our own destiny. So if I'm following a strict formula, a strict written out set of rules, somewhere deep down in my psyche, for better or for worse, I'm going to fight against that a little.
Hey, real quick, we'll be back to the show in just a few seconds. But right now, I have to tell you about the free Change Made Easy private Facebook community. If you want to join hundreds of change seekers just like you, and get free trainings, resources, and direct help from me in order to help make your quest for change easy, then click the link in the show notes that says Facebook group now. You'll be directed to my private Facebook group that I created just for clients and listeners of this podcast. And as a bonus, you'll get a free hour-long training on eliminating self-sabotage. All you have to do is click Facebook group in whatever podcast app you're listening on right now. Okay? Let's get back to the show.
So you said that we have to find what feels interesting and what feels manageable. Now, what if I'm saying, well, what feels interesting and manageable to me is watching Netflix all day and eating all of my nephew's leftover Halloween candy. That's what I want to do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if that's what you want to do, then do it on purpose. You know what I mean? My new book is called The Habit Trip, a fill in the blank journey to a life on purpose. And that's not a life of purpose. That's a life on purpose, so that the choices that you're making, you are making them on purpose, so that if watching Netflix and eating Halloween candy feels right for you year round, go for it. Then you probably don't need me as a health coach to help you move past that. If you're listening to your body might be telling you that, oh, sitting on the couch all day is really, I'm starting to get this weird like nerve pain in my leg and I'm feeling kind of sick from all this candy and that sort of stuff. Then you're listening, then you're starting to listen to those alarm bells we were talking about earlier. And then you can say, okay, that's actually not what I actually want. So it's a balance. Life should be full of any kind of pleasures that you have access to and that you can choose. So it's a matter of balance. As always, everything always comes back to balance.
I think that is so powerful. Do it on purpose and living a life on purpose. And that brings me to really the major point that I make all the time with this podcast, with my coaching clients, with my social media, is always about, are you in the driver's seat or not? A lot of times I feel like people come to me and they're like, oh, well, I just don't know. I just ate all this stuff and then I just feel bad. Or it doesn't have to be about eating. It could be, I skipped a workout and then I felt bad. Or I knew I was supposed to answer all those emails and I just closed my email inbox and I opened up Netflix and I just felt bad afterwards. And the thing I always say is the thing we need to think about is that the last part there where they say, I felt bad afterwards, where you're then choosing that thing of, you're choosing I felt bad afterwards. I'm going to eat all that candy, which feels good now, but afterwards, the next day, I feel either mentally like I let myself down, or I feel physically like I'm sick because my body doesn't like when I eat nothing but 18 king size Kit Kats as much as I would like it to. So how do I separate that feeling of right now is what I want, but probably is not good for me in the future?
Yeah, so I work a lot with people on this issue. I mean, it's this idea of delayed gratification is really, really hard. So what's really important is to find, when we talk about what feels important and what feels manageable, you want to along the way find things that also feel good in the moment, at least at some level, and put your attention on that immediate good feeling. So if you're having nerve pain in your leg from watching Netflix, if you get on the floor and stretch while you're watching Netflix, then you're managing that pain, you're doing something healthy for yourself, and you're still getting your Netflix. But I think another thing that's really important for people that they don't realize is that if they've been trying to make a change for a long time, again and again, it's been going for months or years or decades, is that bad, I'm putting the bad in quotes, bad habits are not flaws, they're coping mechanisms. So when somebody is turning to Netflix, or like your email example, I'm supposed to be doing this work and instead I'm going to go watch this show or whatever. That's some level of procrastination and avoidance. And what you're generally avoiding is some sort of uncomfortable feeling with that. And so the Netflix is not irrational. It's a coping mechanism. Same thing with eating food late at night or something like that. If that's a routine or a ritual somebody's got, they're doing it because in the moment it feels calming or comforting somehow. And so the idea then is to get under those habits so that you're looking at, okay, here's the trigger. So I talk about this a lot, habits. And this was wonderfully written about by Charles Duhigg in his book, The Power of Habit. But habits have three parts. They have a trigger, they have the habit itself, and then they have the reward on the other side of it. So if you've got something that you're in a routine of doing that you'd really prefer not to do, look at the trigger. If it's late night eating, maybe it's after dinner, after you put the kids to bed, whatever, you're going and you're eating whatever it is that you're trying to stop doing. And then the reward, what is the reward? It's that sense of comfort, that sense of relief. So instead of trying to completely uproot this coping mechanism that you've built, trying to find some kind of replacement habit that, because the trigger's not going to change the time of day, and the reward, you're still looking for that comfort that you're finding from the food. So trying to replace that habit with something else that gives you comfort in the moment that also feels healthy. And it can be a lot, it's a process, it's hit or miss finding that. It takes some experimentation to find it, but it's almost always possible to do.
Yeah, so much that you just said that I think is so important. One, the last bit that you just said there, it is hit or miss. And I always want to highlight when we talk about things like this for people listening that there is no one answer for this stuff. It might take a lot of trial and error. It might take trying and it not getting it right. And if my thing is snacking, myself, I will, when clients ask me for advice, okay, I know that snacking at night is unhealthy. What should I do instead? There's meditating, there's reading, there's going for a walk, there's calling your mom, there's a million different things. I don't know what's going to work for you. And now this goes back to being client-centered. And this is exactly what you were talking about before. It's that you better than anyone else. And this is why it can be frustrating, I think, for clients because it's just tell me the answer. Well, you're not giving me an answer. You're giving me options. What do I do if I'm someone who's listening to this and I'm thinking like, no, like I don't want to. The reason I come to a professional is to be told what to do. That's the whole reason of me finding someone like a trainer or like a coach or something like that. So how are you going to tell me that I now have to figure it out on my own?
Yeah. Well, first of all, you can go do that. Go find a trainer and they can tell you what to do and you can see how it goes. And if it works, then that's great. And if it doesn't, then maybe you need to try a different way. Now, what a coach can help you do is make your goals and the actions you want to take on the way there concrete and measurable and help you focus your attention on those immediate payoffs and those immediate rewards that you're getting along the way so that you're building your natural engagement and motivation. So it's not that you're going to go to a health coach and they're just going to sit back and look at you and be like, you tell me what you're going to do and I'm just going to write it down. That's not how it goes. They can help you shape it and mold it. And they might say this week, okay, we've established that this particular replacement habit is what you want to try. So we're going to put on our scientist hat and experiment. We're going to have the scientific process. We're going to try it for a week and we're going to see how it works. And if it doesn't work, look at all these other things that we have on this list that we can try next. So let's just see how it goes. And I can be your accountability partner. We can figure out all those obstacles we talked about and see what might get in the way and how to get around them and all of that stuff. So it is tangible and actionable. It's just that it's motivated and driven by your needs and your decisions about what you want to do.
Yeah, that's, I think, a super important distinction to make. And as you said, it's the scientific method. It's just experimentation. And that is what allows us to take the good bits and then leave the bad, because we're just experimenting. We're just trying, okay, this worked. Okay, that's great. This didn't. Okay, noted. Now we know what doesn't work. And we can kind of move forward like that. So speaking of change, in your book, one of your books, you have three, I know, but Lightness of Body and Mind, right? You break up creating change into kind of three parts, right? And the first is making a choice, then making it happen, and then making it last. So my question is, with those first two, making a choice and making it happen, why isn't making it happen first? Isn't everything about taking action?
No, action without awareness is not helpful. So the first thing you have to do, like I said at the beginning when we were saying, is to take a snapshot of what is the situation and to get that initial kind of overview awareness, and then to start building in a regular check-in of, oh, there's that thing that happens every time I eat this thing. Ah, that's interesting. So we're taking note over time of what's actually happening. That if the actions are happening just in a vacuum, then they're not particularly useful. You want to be able to act on the really, I love the word grok. You've grokked, you have a deep understanding of what your body is experiencing and what your mind is experiencing and what feels uncomfortable about that. And once you have that really deeply understood, then you can move on from there and start implementing actions. There's a story I tell, I think it was in Lightness of Body and Mind, about a client that I had who was eating a pint of ice cream every night before bed. She was very, very, very overweight and was not happy that way and wanted to make a change. And so I assigned her as a coach. All right, you want to like figure out that this actually doesn't feel good? Here's what we're going to do. I'm giving you full permission as your coach. I want you to eat a pint of ice cream every night, all of it. Don't stop in the next 2 weeks or whatever. And she came back and she was like, I'm so sorry. After a week, I started eating like a half of a pint every night. I was really like, I knew I was going to have to do it again the next day and I didn't want to. And so what she had done there was she actually, that permission and releasing the sort of guilt cycle that she was in and the I'm going to stop tomorrow thing that people say so frequently, freed her to actually check in with her body and how it felt and what she needed to have that coping mechanism. And that cut those nightly calories in half for her. So it's counterintuitive sometimes, but sometimes you have to go backwards to really check in. What does this negative behavior do to me? How does it actually feel? And if I remove all of the mental stuff around it, what does it feel like?
Yeah, that makes complete sense. I always talk about awareness is the first step. You can't change a problem that you don't know exists. And I have a program called the 3B solution, and it's brain, body, being. And the very first lesson, the first week, the very first thing we do when someone starts that program is a self-assessment. We have to see, where are you starting to figure it out, right? If you want to get to Shea Stadium, I don't know, that doesn't exist anymore. If you want to get to Madison Square Garden, yeah, that's just shows how much I know about sports. If you want to get to Madison Square Garden and you put that in your GPS and you don't have a starting location, it's not going to do much for you. You need to know where you're starting to be able to map your route and your destination. And what you were just talking about, though, was so interesting, talking about permission. And I'm wondering, that brings up a lot for me about what do people need to understand about permission, and why was that such a pivotal thing for your clients specifically, or in general for people to start to make a change?
Yeah, well, those of us who've grown up in the US and have spent our lives chasing these ideals of how we're supposed to be, look, behave, achieve, all of that stuff. And it takes us, it's always out there in the distance in front of us. And it's based on somebody else's measurement about who we're supposed to be. So if we can take that in, and this kind of weaves in with that idea of doing things on purpose as well. This idea of, this is actually my life. I'm going to take ownership of this. Where I am now is a result of a lot of things, and I don't have control over all of those things, but I certainly have control over some of them. And so if we can take ownership and realize that we have agency to move forward, then we can give ourselves permission to take a huge leap and make a big change, or permission to sit back a little bit so that we can really sit with how we feel and recognize that before we take a big leap, so that it's driven by something meaningful for us.
Yeah, I obviously agree with everything that you say all the time, so I'm going to stop saying that I agree. But agency is a big word. You keep, as you're talking, there's certain words that always stand out to me that are so important and that I want to highlight for listeners. Just permission was before, but agency right here. And that is going back to where we started this conversation, the whole thing about being client-centered and people coming up with their own route. Agency is that feeling of being in control of my own destiny. Like, I can do something by my choice. There's a psychologist, I think it was Skinner, I don't know, it doesn't matter, who in the 70s or 80s discovered what they call learned helplessness. And learned helplessness is when they put a bunch of dogs in, and this is when it was obviously years ago when you could torture dogs for science, whatever. But yeah, I don't think they shocked them that badly, but they put a bunch of dogs in a cage and basically had the floor shocked, like, or a little electric shocked. And then there was a wall where they could jump over to the other side. And then, so they would administer the shock, and then the dogs would jump over to the other side and to safety. And then they had another set of dogs where they would administer the shock. And when they jumped over to the other side, there was that side was shocked too. So they couldn't escape the shock. And then when they changed it to where the dogs they took those dogs who couldn't escape the shock and shocked them in a place where like they could escape it. They didn't even try, because they had learned that there was no point in fighting against what they had. Basically saying that their agency had been taken away. They had no choice to fight against the pain or the shock. And then they just learned to accept it. So they just laid down and accepted what was happening. And I think that is, in so many words, what happens to people with diet and exercise specifically, and in general with life change, because people all the time will say, well, like I've tried every diet. What's the point? Because I haven't done it. And then we feel like if I can't control it, if I can't choose to be on a diet and then have it work, what's the point of even trying anymore? My question then for you based on that is like, how can I give that agency back to someone else? Or how can I get that for myself? If I'm someone listening who's been like, I've tried all the things and nothing works for me, and what's the point of even trying anymore? And clearly there's some outside force that just wants me to fail. And there's plenty of people who feel like that because the world is a hard place and the universe is conspiring against me.
Yeah, well, first of all, you're breaking my heart with that story. That's a really terrible story. But yeah, no, there's a term called self-efficacy in psychology and also in coaching, which means just simply knowledge and confidence and awareness that you're capable of doing something and of following through. So when I mention the nerve pain and getting off the couch and stretching during your Netflix thing, little changes like that, where you're learning that you do have the agency to adapt to whatever alarm bells are going off in your body and to make a positive change. Once you have that confidence and it's something that you're doing on a regular basis, and it really doesn't take that long to achieve that level of confidence with some kind of micro change, micro habit like that, then that's where all the other changes grow from. All of that confidence comes out of that, which is why we don't want to be constantly chasing these big goals right off the bat. And especially for folks that are, like you describe, have been really struggling for a really long time trying to chase these ideals that are unrelated to their own needs. Finding out what is your need, figuring out what kind of micro change you can make so that you can get an immediate payoff and so that you can get that sense of self-efficacy, and then building on that from there so that you can take these bigger leaps as you go.
Yeah, I think that building small wins and celebrating those small wins is an extremely important. I actually just released an episode a few weeks ago. People scroll back that it was titled the Learning to Celebrate Small Wins for exactly that reason, because this was what trains our brain to do that and to look for the positive. So I think that those little things are what adds up, and people often go about it backwards. Going back to what you said before about it sounds counterintuitive, but sometimes you have to start the opposite way, going to your book. But that people think that the way to make change is to make these big, huge leaps. Like I'm going to change everything and I'm going to be the guy who's super healthy and this and that. But often it's these tiny little incremental changes that lead to the big change over time. And that kind of leads me to my next question, which is one of the things that we want to change the most. I know, at least in my practice with clients and just understanding people at a certain level, the thing that people struggle with a lot is stress. And my question to you is, I've read in some of your writing about using habits and habit change specifically to affect and deal with stress and stress relief. But my question is, isn't stress kind of built into life? Isn't that from the big things? Like I'm stressed because of my kids, and I'm stressed because of my job, and I'm stressed because of my mortgage, that I can't habit that away. So how does changing little daily habits and little tiny wins affect these things that are like weighing me down so much?
That is a great and very important question. Yeah, so the next article I've got coming out on Forbes is about mindfulness. And I use the wonderful John Kabat-Zinn quote, you can't control the waves, but you can learn to surf. So the habits are like tiny little reinforcements that are going to create breathing room and coping mechanisms throughout your day that are healthy. In my book, in the Habit Trip, I talk about so the Habit Trip is kind of like it's like a Dr. Seuss meets behavioral health, behavioral science. So your vehicle in this, kind of like the Phantom Toll Booth kind of a story, is an orb, which is one of these large plastic balls that you might have seen people bumping around kind of the countryside in these giant balls. And so the idea of building these tiny habits throughout your day is that you can be rolling around in this giant ball, kind of banging into cliff sides or rocks and jumping and bumping everywhere and get really banged up by that. Or you can build a platform and some handrails and put some padding and maybe a little bit of glitter or some paint and make it pretty for yourself, so that you have these built-in reinforcements so that you can bounce freely and bang into things and bounce off and go the other way without getting injured and sucked down in the process. And that's the same idea that Kabat-Zinn is talking about the waves are going to keep coming. They're not going to stop. But if you can learn to float and to get back up on your board so that you can ride the next big wave that comes along, then you're building the skills to manage the stress, because it's going to keep coming. It's not going to go away.
Yeah, I love that quote, and 100%. It's in the book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which I talk about nonstop on this podcast. I'm sorry for listeners if you haven't gone out and bought it yet, I don't know what more I can do. But one of the habits is you're understanding your spheres of influence, which talks about controlling the controllables. And there's certain things in life that are uncontrollable. Using the example I was just talking about, okay, my mortgage, my kids, my work. Can I change that? Maybe yes, maybe no. But there are things in life I can change. Like you said, putting glitter in your desk cubicle to spice it up a little bit. That might be as good of a solution, and it might not be the perfect solution. But I don't think that we're looking for perfect. We're actually just looking for what can help just a little bit. And as you're talking, it just really reminded me. I just actually grabbed this book. I've just finished this book. It's called Improv Wisdom, and it's about using improv in your everyday life. It's actually an amazing book. I highly recommend it. You would love it, but any listeners would definitely love it too. Like, it literally is. It blew me away how good this book is. But there's a passage that I just really want to read. I read this to my clients on our last coaching call, but I really want people to hear this. So I'm going to read just their words verbatim. It says, the Japanese have a word for this rule. It's arugama. It is the virtue of abiding with things as they are. It implies a realistic and responsive approach to life. The most consistent road to unhappiness that I know comes from turning a blind eye to reality. We do this when we wish potato chips weren't fattening and eat them anyway, put off doing bills just one more day, live an unhealthy lifestyle, fail to heed the warnings on the label, or focus on a partner's shortcomings and spend time trying to talk him into doing things our way. Wishing things were different, or that I was different, simply waste time. And I just love that so much, because that just literally sums everything up. It's like, things are the way they are, and me wanting it to be any differently, I think, is just an inherent waste of energy. And if I could take all of that energy and pour it into the things I can change, which are things like those tiny habits, that is the path to a purposeful life.
Yeah. And inherent in that too is that you're not broken. All of those things just listed in that quote you just read are the result of experience and of needing to manage somehow. Even wishing your partner was different. You're trying to manage based on the tools that you have in your toolbox. So recognizing that you're not broken, starting from where you are. And then there's a wonderful, I can't remember who it was, it's also in the book, but there was an interview on Being on NPR, and this guy was talking about, if you're standing in a 360-degree circle and you walk straight out in front of you, you're going to end up at a particular destination. If you turn 1 degree to the left or the right and walk straight, you are going to end up in a vastly different situation and scenario down the road. So these tiny changes, people have a hard time understanding that they really do make a huge difference. An example I like to use is, what is the difference between a person who does 10 push-ups every day of their life until they're 90 and somebody who doesn't? It's a huge difference in their strength and their ability to be well in old age. So it's the tiniest little things, and people don't think they matter, but they really, really do.
Yeah, I use all of the same principles with my clients. And I wanted to actually talk about this next because I know you, like I, started as a personal trainer in the fitness world. So I wanted to ask you how you now look at fitness, specifically weight loss as well, diet, if you want to talk about that. But with now what you understand about humans and coaching and things like that, and how do you look at the fitness industry and the health and wellness industry, and are they the same? What's the difference?
Yeah, so I have always had sort of a difficult relationship with the fitness industry. I never worked for a gym. I've been doing this for nearly 20 years and have always been out on my own. I think that, well, and also my clientele, when I first started, I was out in LA, and I decided very specifically to work with people who were struggling with their bodies in some way or another. That could be teenagers with eating disorders, people going through menopause, people recovering from cancer, chronic pain, disease, whatever they had going on, obesity. Everybody was welcome for me. And I was never doing boot camps or marathons or any of that stuff. So I've always been a gentle personal trainer. But weight loss, body image, all that stuff was something I personally struggled with at the very beginning, which is probably why I started doing that work in the first place, was to try to find a place where I could be at peace with my own body. And I think that, to me, it was the natural entry into health coaching, but it's also a tenet that I can hold for personal training as well. I think it's really important that whatever that means for you, whether you're an elite athlete or you're somebody who's 50 pounds and really trying to just move more, is to approach with kindness and generosity and well-being at the center of it. And so that what you're doing is finding a way to live fully and wholly and at peace in your body, whatever that ends up being. And often for people, like, they've got in their head, they'll come to me and they'll say, I need to lose 50 pounds. And then we'll coach and they'll change some things that come really naturally to them. And then they'll lose 30 pounds. And then they'll say, you know what, this feels good. And I'm not interested in making the changes that are required to get to 50 pounds. And at that point, they're at peace, both emotionally and physically, with their bodies. And that is an extraordinary place to be.
Yeah, that exact scenario has happened to me. I mean, countless times, exactly that. And because it goes back to what you were talking about earlier, about we have these pictures in our heads of the way things are supposed to look, right? The way a guy is supposed to have big arms and abs, or a girl is supposed to be a size whatever, or that even how we're supposed to eat. Women at restaurants shouldn't order this, that, or the other thing. We have these pictures in our head that are madness. And often I feel like the fitness, and that's why I have so much gripe with the fitness industry, because they prey on this I mean, some on purpose, some not, many people don't know any better. A lot of people think they're doing a service. Well, just be more motivated, just try harder, just come to my boot camp class. And again, that was me. There was many years where people would go, I don't know, I just can't stick to a diet. And I go, oh, well, it's because you need more discipline. Now, again, I've done entire podcast episodes on this, where it's like discipline and motivation, like those, what does that even mean? We need to make a plan that will help you get to whatever goal you want, if it is truly something you want. And then we get to, why is it the thing that you want? Someone says, I want to lose 50 pounds. Well, why not 49? Why not 48? Why not 52? Why not 30? Well, because of this, that, or the other. But a lot of times they have a picture in their head of, oh, well, because I know that a woman my age, my height is supposed to be this weight or this shape or something like that. And my plea for everyone listening and for people, and the reason I'm doing this podcast and the reason I'm doing everything, is just because I want people to understand that stuff isn't real, and that there's no finish line. There's no light at the end of the tunnel. There is no, oh yeah, okay, well, finally I lost all that weight and now everything's okay. Now life goes on easy mode. And now, again, that mortgage that was being held over my head, now someone else is going to pay that off. And my stress from my kids, those go, nope, life still sucks. You're just a little lighter and haven't had a cookie in a while. So right. But I always caveat this with saying, I am saying this from a place of privilege, as not just a straight white guy, that's different, but as a fit guy, as a guy who's, I mean, I don't mean to pat myself on the back, but decently good looking and in shape and has tattoos and looks cool and isn't overweight and never struggled with it. So it's easier for me to say, no, you're fine, just the way you are. But for someone who has body image issues, or what do you say to someone like that, who's, again, well, easy for you to say, you're in shape, you have money, you have a roof over your head, like I'm struggling, or I just hate my whatever about myself.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of my catchphrases is, you can't get a body or a life you love by doing things that you hate. So if you're trying, if the image that you have in your head of how you're supposed to look does not align with your body to a degree that you would have to live a miserable life in order to achieve that image, then we need to step back and take a look at what that goal actually is, and if it's actually a real goal that you're interested in doing. This also brings up I have big issues with the term best self because it implies that there's a destination. And the best that we can do really is be flexible and adjust our vision as we go of what feels like wellness for us. So if we can help people identify that, then they're way, way ahead. And then I have struggled with body image and weight in my life. And like I say, as a gentle trainer, like I have my very gentle workouts that I do. I don't beat myself to a pulp. I'm not a hard body at all. I understand that struggle. And so that really, it takes it back to the client's perspective. So what is a time in your life when you felt free in your body? You were free to do whatever activity you wanted, to show up in a room whole, to wear clothes that felt good on you. What is a time when you had that? And most people can identify something that wasn't high school. Not everybody, but most people have had that experience of feeling okay in their skin, which is such a gift, such a gift. So it's about identifying what that is for now. If you're 40 or 50 or 60, what is it now? Because now it's going to be different than it was before. And if we can identify that, then we can work backwards from there.
Yeah, I think the last bit you just said is what is my goal now is so important, or the thing now, because a lot of people have this comparison to, well, when I was 20, it was like this. And I say all the time, it's like, you are where you are, not where you want to be. So people compare themselves to their past self or their future self. They go, well, I know that in the future, when I'm in shape, I want to be working out 5 days a week, but you haven't worked out in 5 years. So maybe we start with just 1 day a week. And I think that that's a huge place is meeting yourself where you are. But also what you just said that I really loved was, is your goal even your goal? And I think that's the key takeaway here. Like, again, people I want to lose 50 pounds because I read in Shape magazine that a woman who's 5'5" should weigh 115 pounds. And again, who makes these rules? Trust me, I've worked at gyms for a very long time. I know many women who are 160, 170, 180 pounds and are strong as hell. Yep. Strong as hell, fit as hell, and will live to be 100+ years old, and they will have an amazing life. So it's like these numbers, like there is a level of, yes, okay, there's a level of, if you are severely overweight, it can negatively affect your health. That's fine. But society has put a lot of these things into boxes that I don't think they really fit into. So that's I just, an important thing that I always challenge my clients on is when they say that I want to do something, I have this goal. It's just, okay, why? Because as your client might found, as these people might find, as they get further along their journey, the goal changes, the goalposts move, right? You think, well, I'm only going to be happy when I lose 50 pounds, and you lose 20 pounds. And you're like, whoa, actually, I like to be at this weight because it means I can still eat a cookie now and then and not hate my life. And I think that that's a very important thing as well, that holds just as much value, if not more, than whatever arbitrary view of health and fitness that people have in their heads.
Yeah, I mean, what is precious? What is precious about your life? And a lot of times that's going out with a partner for a nice dinner, or you can have precious things that are also, not that going out for dinner with a partner is healthy, but it also can be not so healthy. So it depends what you're doing. But you can also take walks with people, with a weekly walk with your best friend. Hugely important for your long-term well-being, both for the movement itself and for the companionship and community that you're building there. So yeah, it's a matter of identifying what those things are, back to the beginning of what matters, what really matters.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. What is precious about you, to you? What is precious that in your life that you want to pour into and pour your energy into? So I think that's a great place that I want to kind of start wrapping up here, because I want to be respectful of your time. And then the last question that I want to ask, I ask every guest on here, is to leave listeners with one action step that they can take right now to start living a healthier, happier life.
Yeah. So my favorite thing to do is to have people find a tiny little thing, like we've mentioned today, stretching. We've mentioned 10 push-ups, even, or for you, it's 3 push-ups. That's fine. Finding tiny little thing. It could be 3 deep breaths first thing in the morning, but that you can tie to a routine that is already part of every single day that you have. So whether you're brushing your teeth or you're drinking your morning coffee or you're putting your feet on the floor first thing in the morning, picking a thing, a very quick thing that is essentially effortless, and doing it on auto repeat again and again. So it weaves into your day, and then you will start to build that self-efficacy. You'll have more confidence, and then you'll be able to build more on top of that single tiny little habit.
Don't forget about the free Change Made Easy private Facebook community. Come join hundreds of change seekers just like you and receive free trainings, resources, and direct help from me that will help make your quest for change easy. Just go into the show notes of whatever app you're on right now and click the link that says Facebook group. You'll be directed to my private Facebook community that's just for clients and listeners of this podcast. And as a bonus, you'll get a free hour-long training on eliminating self-sabotage. All you have to do is click Facebook group in whatever app you're listening on right now.
All right, Sarah and I covered a lot in this episode. We explored the transformative power of client-centered coaching and learned that by focusing on what is most important to the individual, coaches like Sarah help their clients achieve their goals in ways that feel comfortable and natural, which promote long-term success, consistency, and a feeling of swimming with the current rather than against it. Another key takeaway from our conversation is the profound impact of small incremental changes. Sarah shared how even the tiniest habits, like stretching during Netflix or doing a few push-ups a day, can accumulate over time into significant improvements, and that makes a big change. These small wins also build confidence and momentum and make larger goals more achievable. And we also discussed the importance of self-awareness and how this is a crucial element in facilitating your long-term success. Because by understanding and acknowledging your current state, you can make more informed choices and adapt habits that are truly in line with your values and needs. This awareness enables you to live a life on purpose, ensuring that your actions are deliberate and aligned with your deepest priorities. That is change made easy.